Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to the latest edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Humanitarian Issues, and is a continuation of last night's Read TFOS. There are many different life forms in the galaxy. There are crystalline-looking creatures that vaguely resemble Earth arachnids inhabiting the hot, rocky surface of Tartarus 3. Bathed in the chlorine gas of the homeworld's atmosphere, they consume the very rocks beneath their spider-like feet. On Josh Tyne 4, large lumbering creatures that look more like walking mountains than living things subsist completely only on carbon dioxide they extract from almost liquid atmosphere that exerts pressure more closely resembling that found at the bottom of Earth's deepest oceans. And on Post-Scene 2, live amphibian creatures that could pass as crabs from any of the Earth's 7 seas. Though they are life, not one of those creatures exhibit any behavior that could be remotely considered sapient. From the day mankind first became aware of his place in the universe, scientists and biologists have warned that it is highly unlikely that intelligent sapient life on another world will resemble that found on Earth. They warned that when mankind did encounter a sapient intelligence, we might not even be able to recognize it. We were warned that we could never be sure what pathway sapience, intelligence, or even life itself might choose on another world. But then, sapient aliens did come, and those worries were forever relegated to the vast sea of disproven hypotheses. The aliens arrived in great massive ships, large enough to easily be seen from the ground, and from the ship came the Litharians. Aliens not so different from humans. A single bilaterally symmetrical body, 2 legs for locomotion, 2 arms ending in hands with digits for manipulation. And instead of 5 fingers, each of these beings had 6, with an extra appearing as a second thumb on the other side of their hand. Atop this mostly familiar, yet still alien body, sat a single head with 2 ears, 2 eyes, a mouth, and a nose. Make no mistake, they were different from humans. Their skin was vaguely yellow-colored, and while they had 2 eyes, their eyes would have appeared much more suitable had they been found on Earth's thousands of species of snakes. And though they had hair, the hair they had would have been more suitable for a beaver or otter. And their ears, though functioning exactly as human ears functioned, resembled those found on a cow, goat, or some other farm animal, albeit smaller. Despite all the warnings, it appeared that there was a pathway for intelligence, and nature had found that pathway. Though up close the differences were very apparent. From a distance, standing side by side, in the shadows, it would be impossible to discern a human from a Litharian at first glance. On a far distant world, a human and a Litharian stood facing each other. The human had just traveled thousands of light years across the interstellar void, while the alien, though not native to the world, had spent most of his life on it, watching everything play out behind the false security of a vehicle windscreen, was the alien's adult child, Calatho. Although not born on, Calatho had grown up on this planet. His father, fearing for his safety, had brought him and his mother to this world a lifetime ago. Until this moment, the humans were nothing more than a childhood terror brought on by stories of demons from another world. But now he sat clutching the controls of his ground vehicle. Barely beyond the arm's reach, in front of the clear windscreen stood his father, face to face with that same childhood terror. Oh, he'd seen humans before, but only in illustrations and on video displays. Never in his wildest dreams did he ever consider that one day he might find himself this close to one. Though larger than a Litharian, Calatho hoped that the human face to face with his father was not the beast of nightmares he had always imagined them to be. Time seemed to grind to a halt. Calatho could not decide if the human was waiting for his father to speak, or if his father was waiting for the human to speak, or maybe both. As though he could sense the tension in the air, the human seemed to decide that he would make the first move. Slowly and deliberately, he raised his hand and extended it towards Calatho's father. Ignoring the pain in his joints, the small alien stood facing the human that seemed to tower over him, almost a head taller. the human presented an imposing visage. Humans were generally symmetrical, but despite his imposing size, his upper body seemed far too muscular for even this size. With close-cropped silver hair, he wore a light green uniform that seemed designed to blend in with the foliage. On his right side, in a brown pouch, was stuck what was clearly a weapon. Despite his armed nature and imposing size, he seemed to be making a deliberate effort to appear as non-threatening as possible. Glancing at the weapon and looking back towards a large convoy of what appeared to be military vehicles lined up behind him, it was clear that, had he wanted to, this being could have killed him and his son as easily as one might swat a bug. After long moments of silence, the human raised his right hand and extended it. "My name is Colonel Yuri Armstrong. I bring you greetings from the First Interstellar Republic," he said in almost perfect Lotharian. Confused, the alien stood in silence, not knowing how to respond. Slowly, the human reached his extended arm farther out and took hold of the alien's opposing arm. Moving it in an up-and-down motion, he appeared to be operating a manual water pump. "This is called shaking hands," he said, "a traditional human-friendly greeting." Quickly grasping the concept, Rhagar pumped the human's arm in return. "I am Rhagar," he said before adding, "Friendly greeting. Does that mean that you have not come to wipe us out?" The expression on the human's face changed. "Wipe you out? What would ever make you believe that we were here to do that?" he responded, his powerful voice booming across the countryside. Rhagar seemed to search for the right words for a brief moment before he replied, "You did attack the conference Hellworld, and it is my understanding that you wiped them out." "That was ages ago," replied Colonel Armstrong, "and," he added, "the conference attacked us first. You may not be aware of the fact that the conference ship destroyed one of our largest cities, killing nearly 4 million innocent humans." "I am aware of that event," responded Rhagar, discreetly skipping the fact that he actually worked for the conference at that time. "It was my understanding that the destruction of Paris was a punitive act under conference law for failure to pay legally assessed taxes." The human colonel tilted his head and paused for a moment. His demeanor seemed to change, as though something in Rhagar's words drew additional scrutiny. Quickly returning to his former demeanor, the colonel continued. "As I said, that was long ago. Things are different now. So why have you come?" "Well, the Galactic Conference had ruled for so long, many worlds were not prepared for life without conference guidance. Apparently it was the conference that forced many worlds to get along, almost as soon as the conference fell. A world called the Aberridus attacked its neighbor, Ulratha. Eventually we were forced to intervene in that conflict in order to prevent them from annihilating each other. While we were working that conflict out, yet another pair of neighboring worlds, Jiren and Resaix, went to war. And then another conflict popped up. More conflicts quickly followed. It started to look like without the presence of the Galactic Conference, the galaxy was going to descend into chaos. We are aware of the strife after your people came. We are not completely cut off from the rest of the galaxy out here." "Well, we finally managed to get a grip on the situation," replied the colonel, "and for the most part the galaxy has settled down into peace. Trade between worlds is now greater than when the conference ruled. By the way, that's how we knew you were here. For years there have been rumors of a group of colonists that fled right before our attack on your home world. I was given the job of finding you." This time it was Rhagar's turn to tilt his head in scrutiny. "But why now?" Seeming to relax, the human adjusted his stance. "You want the official answer to that question or the real answer?" For a long moment, Rhagar stood in confused silence. "Official or real? I don't understand." Seeming to become more comfortable, the human reached out and placed a hand on Rhagar's shoulder for a moment. "Perhaps, may I call you that? For some reason you seem to remind me of my grandfather, and that's what I always called him." After considering the human's request, Rhagar nodded his head and answered, "I would be honored. Please continue." Removing his hand from the smaller alien's shoulder, the human reached into a pocket on his uniform and took out a brown cylindrical object. Bringing it to his mouth, he bit off one end of it and spat the removed piece to the ground. Placing the remaining piece between his lips, he extracted a small silver object from another pocket and in a single swift motion flipped it open and activated some mechanism that spouted a small flame. Bringing the glowing flame to the end of a cylindrical object, he inhaled deeply. Closing and returning the silver object to his pocket, he took a smoldering cylinder from his mouth and blew out a cloud of smoke into the air. The cylinder seemed to be made of brown leaves tightly rolled together. "Now that's a fine Havana. You know, a good hand-rolled Havana might be one of my favorite things to come out of your attack." Rhaegar watched in fascination as the human placed the brown object to his lips once again, spewed the cloud of smoke into the air. "You know, thanks to 70 years of political dick-waving, it was illegal to import these into my home country. But once you guys came along, all that old political posturing was out the window. A whole planet came together to beat you." Rhaegar shifted his stance uncomfortably. Seemingly sensing the alien's discomfort, the human took the cylinder from his lips. "Officially, we are here on a humanitarian mission. For some reason, mysterious lost alien colonies seem to be a popular topic in my homeworld's culture right now. And this world always seems to rise to the top of any discussion of lost worlds. Eventually, some politician got wind of your existence, and here I am." I don't understand." Blowing another cloud of smoke, the human answered. "Perhaps. I've been a soldier my whole life. If there is one thing I have learned about politicians, it is that every one of them is as concerned with re-election as they are about doing the job. Most of them more so. So some senator decided that it would look good if he could make an impression with the voters with his dedication to humanitarian issues. It didn't take interviewing too many cargo pilots to track you down. Turns out there are a few cargo pilots willing to make a run this far out. Once we located a pilot that had been here, it didn't take too much time to convince him to talk." Still not completely clear on what the human soldier was trying to convey, Rhaegar answered, the large being, "You use the word humanitarian. Does that mean that you think that we are holding humans here?" The colonel seemed taken aback. "Humans? No, I see. No. Since we learned of the existence of intelligent life beyond our own, the word humanitarian has grown to mean so much more than it once did. The word now means that we have concern for or are helping to improve the welfare and happiness of any sapient life, as well as working to save the life of any sapient species, and alleviating the suffering of those sapients." "So you are here for our well-being?" "Well, yes. Though the motivation of the senator that got this ball rolling might be less than altruistic, we are here to help you. We plan to establish regular trade routes and passenger services to your world. And all that operating under the careful control of a human-run interstellar republic, I'm sure." Somehow, despite the vast physical differences, Rhaegar sensed that he had offended the large human standing in front of him. Taking the smoking cylinder once again from his lips, the human reached out and took the yellow-skinned alien by the arm. "Please walk with me. I want to show you something." As they started to move away from the vehicle, Caletho opened the door to stand. Before he could exit the vehicle, his father turned back to look in his direction. "It's all right, son. Stay where you are. I will be back shortly." Rhaegar followed the human around the large hulking transport vehicle. When they reached the rear, the human reached up and pulled the large lever. With a mechanical groan, a large ramp-like door swung to the ground. The human stepped onto the slope platform, turned and offered Rhaegar his hand. The elderly yellow-skinned alien stepped onto the slope with his joints crackling. Stifling a grunt of pain, the being followed the human up the ramp and into the nearly full transport vehicle. Using a primitive iron tool, the colonel pried open one of the large crates that seemed to be made of dense plant material. Reaching in, he withdrew a smaller container that seemed to be made of synthetic material. It was brown and roughly rectangular shape. The sides swelled, as though the contents were beyond its capacity. "This is what we back home call an MRE, said the colonel. "It means meal ready to eat." Tearing one end of the overstuffed container, the human withdrew a smaller pack and tore it open also. Placing it to his lips, he took a bite. "Not the best food in the galaxy," he said between chewing of his teeth, "but I've always been partial to these cherry crumb cakes. Here, try a bite," he added, extending a packet towards the smaller alien. Rhaegar reached out and took half-eaten cake from the human, cautiously sniffing the alien food. He sensed a vaguely fruity aroma. Deciding that the human would not have come halfway across the galaxy just to poison an old man, he took a bite. The flavor was far stronger than he had anticipated. It seemed to be a mixture of both sweet and sour tastes with a gooey consistency that stuck to the roof of his mouth. "Not bad, huh?" added the human as Rhaegar took a second bite before handing the remainder back to the colonel. "You see," said the colonel as he placed the last bite of cake in his mouth, "the cargo pilot who gave us your location said that a large portion of your planet was in the midst of a serious drought, and as a result you're experiencing food shortages." "So you came all this way to bring us food?" "No, not just food, but we figured that would be the way to break the ice, so to speak." "It is true," replied the elderly alien, "that we are experiencing a drought, and food is tight, but no one in this world is starving to death that I am aware of." "But no one turns down free food. And I'm sure that there are needy among you that could benefit from extra food." "Of that there can be no doubt," replied the elderly alien. Tossing the packet and the remains of the contents back into the large container, the colonel replaced the lid. Turning, the human started back down the ramp. Rhaegar followed him. On reaching the bottom, the human effortlessly stepped from the elevated platform. Turning, he extended his hand and helped the elderly alien negotiate the difficult last step. Pointing down the line of stopped transports, the human said, "Perhaps we have 5 truckloads of MREs that we plan to distribute to your people." "I see far more than 5 transports," added the elderly alien as he looked down the row of stopped vehicles. "So you do," replied the human colonel. Stepping back, the colonel seemed to visually examine Rhaegar from head to toe. "Let me guess, you're about 65 years old?" "I don't know how the years on this planet compare to yours, but I've been on this world for 58 winters. Before that, I was 32 conference years old. But the years here are a little shorter." 90. The human placed his lips together and made a whistling sound. "Well, since conference years are a little shorter than Earth years, I don't think I'm too far off in Earth years." Without giving Rhaegar time to answer, the human continued, "Perhaps I've been watching you walk. You have arthritis, don't you?" "I don't understand that term." "Arthritis is a disease of the joints, experienced by nearly all vertebrates as they advance in years." "Ah, yes. I do have such a condition, although it is known by a different name among the Letharians." "And if you were not out here, at the backside of the galaxy, so to speak, you would have received treatment for your condition." Rhaegar lowered his head. "Yes, it is treatable. This world has little in the way of physicians or medical facilities. Each town has at least a doctor or two, but due to our limited outside contact, medical supplies and drugs are quite scarce." Stepping out of the path the transport had been traveling, the human pointed down the line of vehicles. "These first 5 trucks are hauling food, but do you see those larger vehicles further back?" "I do." "The next batch of trucks is hauling a fully equipped field hospital." "A hospital?"
"Yes. We're going to make sure that from this moment forward, the people of this world have access to the same medical care available throughout the rest of the galaxy. As for," continued the human, "the rest of the vehicles, they contain various supplies and trade items, as well as the support and residential quarters for the humans that will be staying here until this is all up and running smoothly."
Rhaegar stood considering everything he had just heard and seen. The meeting that many had feared would announce the end of this world seemed to instead be poised to usher in a new age for its inhabitants. The human stood in silence for a long moment, waiting for Rhaegar to make the next move.
"Colonel, this day certainly did not turn out as I expected. Many of my fellow citizens feared that you'd come to—" Rhaegar bowed his head. "Honestly, many on this world feared that you were here to kill us all." "You said that before," responded the colonel. "No. As you can plainly see, we came bearing gifts and open arms."
Looking back up into the human's eyes, Rhaegar continued.
"Colonel, there are many fearful citizens gathered in town. It would be best if I returned to town and informed them of your intentions ahead of your arrival."
The colonel looked up to the sky.
"Looks like we have a few hours of daylight left. Go tell your people why we are here."
While he was speaking, he returned to the passenger compartment of the vehicle. Opening the door, he reached in and retrieved a small black rectangular-shaped object with a short extension that wobbled as though it was a spring. Handing it to the yellow-skinned alien, he continued to speak.
This is a walkie-talkie, a communications device. Press the button on the side and speak into the grilled branch here when you want to talk to me. Release the button and you'll be able to hear what I say. Remember to press the button to speak and release it to listen. When you have prepared everyone for our arrival, call me, and we will follow you on into town.
Rhaegar took the object from the colonel.
Very well, Colonel. I hope they will be as reasonable as you seem to be.
With that, he turned and moved in the direction of his son's vehicle, still sitting exactly where he'd stopped a short time ago. Before he could reach the vehicle, his son stood and raced to meet him. As he opened his mouth to speak, the elderly father cut him off.
Son, I know you have questions, but please wait to ask them once we get to town.
Continuing to the passenger door, the son opened it and waited until his father was comfortable. Returning to the operator position, the son expertly maneuvered the vehicle, and in moments they were speeding back towards the town. As they drove, Rhaegar considered what had just transpired. The human colonel claimed that they were on a mission of peace, not occupation, and the food and medical supplies they brought seemed to confirm his words. However, the numbers of humans and the amount of supplies could certainly feed and support an occupying force for a very long time. Crossing his hands over the top of his walking stick, he looked out the window at the terrain gliding past him.
Gods help us if they are lying,
he said too softly for his son to hear. Colonel Armstrong blew a ring of smoke from his now short cigar as he watched the alien vehicle disappear over the hill, speaking only to himself and so softly that his words were carried away in the wind.
How could he possibly know the name of Paris?
End of story. I would like to thank our T5 members and patrons, Caspar Arnholtz, John Creighton, Vidmori, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.